What's up, everybody? It's waba, and I want to take a little bit of time to give the people who are interested an idea of how you should go about playing Shockwave Totem or any Totem Hierophant build in the 3.2 patch. And yeah, so I'm just going to go into it. Just a heads up, real quick, the audio is going to be slightly out of sync, and it's not something I could very easily fix, and just due to time constraints, I'm just going to go right through with this video. You'll see as I'm clicking through how it may fall out of sync. If it doesn't, it may not. I'm actually using Bandicam now to record, so yeah. Anyway, let's just go right into it. So 3.2 Totem builds Hierophant. Boom. This is actually another build I was thinking about, because I am curious if Tailwind works with totem placement, because that would be pretty cool. I don't think it does. Anyway, Templar, Hierophant. So obviously Hierophant got some really good buffs for patch 3.2. You know, no longer will you have the damage penalty. They also added a ton of totem placement speed and 50% in Ritual of Awakening. And you get some mana regen and life regen per totem, which is honestly pretty nice, and it definitely shores up some of your defenses as a totem build. So Ritual of Awakening, that's pretty straightforward. I see a lot of people saying that they really like Conviction of Power, but I do have kind of an argument against Conviction of Power. I think Conviction of Power is good when you only have 6 Ascendancies, because maybe you would take Conviction of Power over Illuminated Devotion for totem builds. However, you will get to a point where I think you should just go with Arcane Blessing. Oh, I thought this was called Arcane Reverence. Anyway, you will get to a point where I think this is better. Mainly because it's pretty easy to maintain your power charges. Like, you know, dropping an Orb of Storms every once in a while to maintain power charges is not that big of a deal. So, I think it's better to maintain power charges with Orb of Storms. Sorry, that's the 3-year-old. Than it is to maintain Arcane Surge with Orb of Storms, because, you know, Arcane Surge has some limitations on, you know, you need a higher mana cost, so you need to run the lower level Arcane Surge, etc., etc. With that being said, I'm not entirely sure what level or what power this Arcane Surge is going to be granting you, but, you know, Arcane Surge gives you percentage mana regen, similar to what you get from Ritual of Awakening. It will give you more spell damage, a decent amount of cast speed, and cast speed is something that's like really good for most totem builds. And then being immune to elemental ailments while you have your Arcane Surge, which will essentially be always, is really, really strong. So yeah, let's go ahead and just build it out a little bit. Let's just assume you're going to go for the full Arcane Blessing and Ritual of Awakening. So essentially, I would just start here, you know, go through the life, yada, yada, yada. Now, if you're going Shockwave Totem, you're going to pick up these. In fact, I'm going to start this assuming you're going Shockwave Totem. Okay. And the big thing about Hierophant Shockwave Totem build is just like you just kind of have some choices for the entire thing. It's going to be a pretty standard tree. I'm not really doing this in any order that you should do it for, like, leveling, for example. You know, this is a pretty basic AoE spell damage tree. You know, I would hold off on picking up the crit for quite a while, like Shaman's Dominion. That is something that you wouldn't take for quite a while. Obviously, while you're leveling, you can just rush for Ancestral Bond. In fact, you should probably just, instead of going out this way first, come up towards Ancestral Bond, and then pathing up this way, taking Arcane Potency, whatnot. This is pretty much going to be like your pretty basic outline of the build. Now, as for taking Mind Over Matter, the only issue with Mind Over Matter is that you want to use auras, so I don't really like investing into Mind Over Matter. If I'm not gonna have at least, you know, 1200 unreserved mana. So you're going to have to figure that out exactly how you would do that, and what you want to do. But overall, this is pretty much going to be it. You start to grab the crit later on. Now, there's another thing. A lot of people with this build, I think people will just kind of default into taking something like Cruel Preparation. But honestly, I wouldn't ever take Cruel Preparation, especially not anymore, because for two reasons. One, Cruel Preparation is two int nodes away, right? So its pathing isn't like really that good for this general tree. And then something like Blood Drinker is one dex node away, which you kind of will need the dex. And these nodes right here are pretty good. Nullification is really strong. Fangs of the Viper, also really strong, gives you dex, movement speed, and physical damage. So Blood Drinker's right here. But you could see that the life is actually still pretty low at 157%. So at that point you might think like, okay, well, what about now? Well, if you're speccing into Ancestral Bond, Devotion is just better. And then it gives you access to another jewel socket. And I just don't really see a point. Now you're at 177% increased life with Mind Over Matter. I don't see a point where you would really want Cruel Preparation. I think this node sucks. In fact, I think the pathing right here sucks for a lot of reasons. Sorry. So yeah, this is again pretty basic tree for a Shockwave Totem build. This will give you 4 totems and pretty decent AoE. We can go in the calculations, add skills. Actually, what I should do is open the other one I had. I really thought I had one. I have a lot of builds in here. Oh, I did not. Perfect. Well, that's just what we like to see. So yeah, while I'm like kind of redoing this, I guess I'll go and talk about some choices that you do have with Shockwave Totem or a crit totem build. Now, it isn't my opinion that power charges, while being really strong, are not really worthwhile for this build. Obviously, if you're going the Conviction of Power route, then you want to figure out how you're going to grab your power charges. This power charge is not that big of a deal, but this power charge over here is a little awkward because you don't want anything up here. Like maybe you want Alchemist, maybe, but most of it I don't really like grabbing anything up here for Shockwave Totem. So okay, you have one power charge over here. That's good to get. Power charge over here, not so much. Maybe if the spell damage node was swapped, if it was like this, then I could see that. But because like over here, for example, when you grab for a lot of the pathing that you do for melee builds, when you grab endurance charges, generally you want to be over here for Resolute Technique, these weapon clusters and everything. And the same goes over here for any like evasion-based builds or like bow crit builds. Over here you're going through that node anyway because you're over here, you're grabbing acrobatics. But there's not really much up here. Like, I would be really curious to see how many builds actually use any of these compared to anything over here, So that makes this power charge a little weird because you're like, I don't ever want to path through that. Like, that's 4 points. Well, that's not really worth it to me. Anyway, so that power charge, kind of dumpster in my opinion, for this tree specifically. This power charge is just, weird. Because it's in this like little like love triangle right here. So now you could do this, and then you have access to another jewel socket, but it's incredibly awkward. So with that said, I'm not a big fan of getting more power charges for Shockwave Totem. Okay, and then that's pretty much why I don't recommend it, or why I don't think I would do it. Now, and that's of course subject to change. The nice thing about Shockwave Totem, or most of the totem builds, is you do kind of have a lot of flexibility if you want to go. If you want to go with your power charges, you can. If you want to go without power charges, you can. Great. Blah, 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 blah. So let's go ahead and get in the skills real quick. So let's go to Shockwave Totem. And then you'd want faster casting, increased AoE, area effect, physical lightning. You would also want, what was the other one I want? Oh, control destruction. And then for 6th link, you would want increased critical strikes. Now, this is if you're going without power charges, increased critical strikes. If you're going with power charges, you probably should use increased critical damage. But like I said, I'm basing this off of being being one without power charges. And the other reason for that is if you add a craft item, magic, diamond flask. If you add this to your build, right now your crit chance is 37% without power charges. With no gear, your effective crit chance goes up to 60%. So, and once you have multiple totems, like that's plenty. And again, this is not accounting for any gear. You know, you still have a lot of potential crit out of your weapon, your shield, and well, pretty much your weapon and your shield. Other slots you should really be prioritizing crit multi and things like that. So yeah, Shockwave Totem, Hatred, and I really did have this all set up beforehand. You're gonna want to Vow Haste, and at the end of this video, I'll also I'll provide links below. So I would say summon Lightning Golem, not a Flame Golem, mostly because they give you about the same DPS when you're all geared out. Like, it could go either way, but the Lightning Golem giving you the attack and cast speed is better for your character because, you know, you could be using something like Shield Charge, Whirling Blades, or any other form of mobility. I just kind of have a preference towards Lightning Golem. So, am I forgetting anything? As for a curse setup, you know, you can, since you are a massive elemental build, you can just do an Orb of Storm setup with curse on hit and LA weakness. I would suggest that. And yeah. So right now we're already looking at about 30k DPS per totem. That's pretty low, but again, remember that is no quality 6th link and not a level 21 Shockwave Totem, which is something that you would really want to prioritize. And that's pretty much it. You could move everything else around. You want to have a cast when damage taken set up as well. I'll just throw this in here so it could be seen. Cast with damage taken. Mortal Call. Not Vow. Mortal Call. And then you could throw increased duration on there. You could have your Golem on there if you want. The thing to note with the Golem is that you will not get as much attack speed or cast speed the lower level the Golem is, so that's kind of the dilemma I have with throwing my cast when damage taken setup on there, or throwing my Golem on my cast when damage taken setup. So yeah, as for items, so this is pretty much your basic, again, tree, skills, items. All right, great. So we got a Diamond Flask. I would use him, Sorrow Gloves. This is just for the simple fact that it gives you a ton of cold damage. And when you something about Shockwave Totem, if you convert all of your damage to elemental damage, then you get 100% benefit from nodes such as this, like Elementalist. Over here, Elemental Focus. Even over here if you really wanted to, or this node right here, this 14 max mana 14 elemental damage node. You do get full benefit from those. If you don't convert all of your damage, then you don't get full benefit. I might be wrong in that, but anyway, that's why I really like these nodes. Just get better when you have full elemental conversion, while you still benefit from these nodes completely. Physical, spell damage, and obviously like things like crit multi. It's kind of a little side tangent. Anyway, so him Sorrow Gloves. You can use a Carcass Jack if you want. This is definitely something you do not have to use. Honestly, I would not necessarily use Carcass Jack. In fact, I gotta check something real quick. Let's look on the configuration. I don't know if they added this yet. Is crit chance lucky? Yes, it is. Do you have Tailwind? I'm looking for something else from that. Have you attacked recently? Have you cast a spell recently? Do you have a totem summon? Yes, you do. All this stuff is automatic, so what I'm looking for is what am I looking? Oh, I'm looking for Arcane Surge. I do not think that this is actually given. Yeah, this doesn't give you Arcane Surge in the tree. So I'm going to actually add. I'm actually going to add Arcane Surge in here. Arcane Surge. There we go. Okay, so anyway, the reason why I mentioned that is because I want to show you the AoE. So if you go to the calc section and you look in the skill detail and you see Shockwave Totem, you can look at its radius. This is the radius for Shockwave Totem. It is a little small. Obviously, I would like to see it maybe to that white ring, or that would be amazing if you could go all the way out to that purple ring. That's like right around it. I wish I could mouse over it to show you, but this is where the benefit of having multiple totems comes into play, because obviously you're never going to place your totems like constantly in the same spot. You're going to be moving and you're going to be dropping them throughout. So the reason why I bring that up is because you don't really need the Carcass Jack. It's more or less the same thing. Carcass Jack will be expensive at the start of a league. Maybe you're playing solo self-found. Maybe it's not really worth it for you. And then also you could get a 6-link so easily, in my opinion. So if you went without a Carcass Jack, you could, especially if you got like a Shaper 6-link, so you have, +1, any of those Shaper or Elder items that have like crit added onto them or anything like that. That would actually be better, and then you just grab these two area of effect nodes on the tree, and you more or less have the same exact AoE. But for the sake of this video, I'm just going to throw a Carcass Jack in there for right now. Everything else is pretty much rare. You probably want an Elemental Scepter with as much explicit attack speed and spell damage as possible. You want a Spell Shield with as much spell damage and crit as possible. What am I looking for? Oh, that's fine. And then everything else. It could be whatever you want on most of it. Rares filling it out completely would work just fine. As for your amulets, you do want to make sure, if you go in your configuration here, you can see that we have 148 strength. To have a level 21 Shockwave Totem, I believe it is 161 strength. So let's go ahead and pull this over and look. No, it's 159. So you want to make sure you have at least 159 strength so you can maintain a level 21 Shockwave Totem. And that shouldn't be too hard for you to do. So yeah, everything else is rare here. As for flasks, obviously a Wise Oak would be pretty good. That is the wrong one to put it in. Here, Silver Flask would be good. I'm not used to this. I actually hardly ever add flasks into my builds in Path of Building, so mostly because I didn't know how to do it for quite a long time. And then you just want one life flask. If you're playing hardcore, maybe you want to drop the Silver Flask for a second life flask, but I only play with one life flask and I play hardcore, so utility, life, oh, bam, to build, and yeah, and you would want to put the appropriate affixes on for this. You know, you'd want to have one staunching, one grounding, one heat, etc., etc. Actually, no, you wouldn't even want to do that anymore because of Arcane Blessing. I forgot. Anyway, yeah, just do the normal kind of flask setup for that. Okay, great. So yeah, everything else is rare. Any helmet. I personally like to go EVES, just because you're not ever going to have enough armor to mitigate the scary hits, so I'd rather just dodge or evade as much as possible. So I would even try to get these murder boots, EVES, and then yeah. Let's see. And if you look here, actually, so let's go and throw in level 84. So this is level, like, roughly level 84. You still have a lot of life to get. I'm just going to put in a leather belt right now, even though you'd probably eventually want a Stygian Vice. Throw that in there. And then opal rings. An opal ring for one, and then I can't remember what the other ring I had in here before. But we could just put in 2 opal rings. That's not a big deal. Throw some life and mana on there. And then as for an amulet, you do have some options for a unique amulet. Like, obviously you could use Abyscos with this build if you wanted to, or you could use the ascetic. You would just have to figure out how you're going to maintain your quantity or whatever out of that. And yeah, so, but for right now, we're just going to throw in, I like marble amulets. They're not going to be as, they're not as important as they were before, because you have that life regen that you're getting from Hierophant now. But yeah, marble amulet, boom, boom, boom. Now, as for jewels, the best thing you could get for jewels is crit multi. So any jewel with as much crit multi as you can get, you could get. You want to get some life on there. Am I blind? There we go. You know, just save that 6%. This is just what I like to do. I would say at least get jewels with life and one offensive stat. So, and you don't really need too many jewels for this build in general. Early on, you might want to use a I forgot what it's called. I think it's called Careful Planning or Fluid Motion. No, it's not Fluid Motion. Brute Force. It's called Brute Force. Right? Yeah. Brute Force. Brute Force. The only reason why I would suggest this is because... Oh no, not Brute Force. The other one. Efficient Training. You might want to use Efficient Training early on if you're having some strength issues, and you could throw Efficient Training right over here, and that will give you a nice little bit of strength, especially if you start to level Shockwave Totem, which you can start to level Shockwave Totem around like level 40 or so. So as for you know, that's pretty much that right there. You're already looking at, you know, near 100k DPS per totem, and that's not even with power charges enabled. And then you would also have Onslaught that's already on there, and yeah, and of course that's not versus Shaper. If you want to look at Shaper, this will not be a good Shaper build, but this will be a good league starter for you, or for anyone who's playing Shockwave Totem. Now, as for where you would go from here, you can get this Jewel Socket over here, you could get the Crit Multi up here. You can eventually actually path this way if you wanted to. Willow Blades is pretty good. Oh, we forgot to take that node. And yeah. See right here, this would be like level 95. And this isn't too bad to get in level 95. And that would give you another Jewel Socket, a little bit more life. And at level 95, you'd be looking at about, you know, about 900 to 1,000 mana unreserved, probably more, because you could get some better mana and stuff on your gear. About 5,500 life, maybe 6k, depending on everything else. And yeah, this is pretty much a Shockwave Totem build for Hierophant. And I should probably add something to this video. If you wanted to do Frostbolt Totems, the build would be pretty similar, at least something that I would think you would do. You would obviously just drop all the AoE, and what else would you drop? Pretty much it. Oh, you wouldn't take Fangs of the Viper, you would go Sniper instead. And yeah, this would be a pretty strong crit Frostbolt Totem build. And you could take Snowforge. Now, this is something that's a little... you would have to kind of figure this out, depending on what you wanted to do. But, as I said earlier, you would never really take Cruel Preparation, because, you know, you're only 2 points away from Ancestral Bond. If you wanted to, you could actually change the pathing quite a bit, because when you're playing Frostbolt Totems, they have such a large range. And I'll actually go ahead and add this in, Frozen Trail. When you're playing Frostbolt Totems, you have such a large range with your Frostbolt that you don't necessarily need to have 4 totems. In fact, the only thing you'd really be getting out of the 4 totems at that point, other than better single target damage, you begin more life regen and mana regen. So the reason why I bring this up also is because you could, you know, obviously drop all this, and you're gonna want to grab Cruel Preparation at that point. But if you could figure out something to do with these 5 points that would make them a little bit better, you can do that. So you can go with triple totem. You don't necessarily need to go with quad totems. You would lose a little bit of placement speed, but whenever you're playing a spell totem build, placement speed is not nearly as much of an issue as with Shockwave Totem. With Shockwave Totem, getting as much placement speed is a big deal, and that's one of the reasons why Hierophant is so good for it now. But with something like Flame Blast Totems, Frostbolt, any spell totem builds, you have placement speed on the quality as on the spell totem support gem, and then it also, I think it just has a different placement speed overall. It might be the same, but the fact that you can get 20% placement speed on the spell gem itself is a big deal, or on the spell totem gem itself is a big deal, while you can't do that with Shockwave Totem. So if you were to go Frostbolt Totems, it would pretty much be the same exact build. Maybe you could drop all this. Maybe you do grab Cruel Preparation. Maybe grab something like Deep Thoughts, and you know, grab a couple of mana nodes around. You grab Snowforge over here. You have a little bit more flexibility. Maybe you grab Nimbleness. Nimbleness is definitely not bad. And yeah, you could, if you really wanted to, and this is what I did do on my Mayhem character. Was it Mayhem? Yeah, this is the Mayhem character. You could figure out a way to come down and grab Phase Acrobatics. Just a little bit of a travel, but I think defensively it could be really worth it. But this would be really good as a Frostbolt Totem build, and it would clear content. Honestly, it would probably clear content better than Shockwave Totem. Either way, I will give you guys the link to both of these down in the description below. The Frostbolt Totem will also include the links for Frostbolt. So, yeah. Thank you guys very much for watching. Sorry I was a little bit longer. Just want to get this out for you. And sorry for the delay and the out of syncness. Anyway, see you guys later.